Hello again from Garden Well, Eat Well. Once more, it's starting to get to be that time of the year. All the leaves have fallen, the days are getting colder, and we've even had a touch of snow already. So it's time to reflect and be thankful for so many things, especially for all the great food we've been able to pick from the garden this season. So with the holiday, I'm doing a 3-part series on how to get the absolute most out of your turkey. For the first, we'll be roasting one that's a good size, about 17 pounds. And I'll also go through all the steps to make the smoothest gravy from scratch. Then, in part 2, we'll make a huge pot of broth from everything that's left over, and I'll show you how to safely pressure can it. Now my channel is Garden Well, Eat Well. So certainly all this so far falls under the eating well category. You might be wondering how the gardening side fits in. Well, in my third video, I'll show you how to take all the turkey bones, large and small, and easily process them in the kitchen so that you'll be able to use them as a fertilizer the next time you plant. We're going to get so much out of our turkey this year, and with hardly wasting anything. So let's get started. If you've never cooked a turkey before, you shouldn't be intimidated. Most new cooks get worried because it's the largest thing they've ever baked before. They're not certain how long to cook it, and how to make sure it stays moist without drying out. But roasting a turkey really is very easy and straightforward. You'll get great results if you just follow through with me in this video. In the past, we used to always buy a fresh turkey 1 or 2 days before we had to cook it. But for the last several years, we switched over to using frozen ones. You can get them much cheaper, and they really turn out to be just as delicious. But when you buy them frozen, you do have to leave it in the fridge a while so it can safely defrost. Usually 3 to 4 days depending on its size. It could even take longer, so you have to make sure to include that in your planning. I also recommend getting a large roasting pan, one with a high lid. These are the best for sealing in the juices. As well, you don't want the turkey touching the bottom of the pan. It could stick while it's cooking. Then you'll have a real problem removing it. So get one that has an elevated tray, especially one that allows you to lift the turkey out once it's done. This one came with a pan. It's pretty sturdy. This other one, well, this one's been in the family for over 30 years. It's seen a lot of turkeys. If you don't have one that lifts out, then you can use a cooling rack that can still keep the turkey off the bottom. But then you'll have to use some prongs to jab into the turkey to lift it out. Certainly though, the lifting tray is a much safer way to go. Let's start by preheating the oven to 325. Then put the turkey in the sink and wash it off to get rid of any blood or any remaining feathers. Also check for any quills that are still embedded in the skin and pick them out. If you come across very fine short quills, these are actually feathers that are just starting to form. They're called pin feathers. If you run your hands all over the skin, you'll easily feel them if they're there. Take these out as well, and if you have any trouble, you can try using some tweezers. After finishing up at the sink, we're ready to move the turkey into the pan. You need to apply some sort of oil now to protect the skin while it cooks. You can rub the entire surface with butter. This will also add some flavor. But if you have anyone in the family that can't tolerate dairy products, you can use olive oil instead like we're doing here. Make sure you coat every bit of the skin. Afterwards, add your salt, and then your pepper, and we also use seasoned salt, but you can add whatever other herbs you'd like sage or Italian seasoning. The turkey will flavor well because the oil on the skin will hold all those spices in place while it cooks. The last step is to add about 1 inch of water. This will keep the turkey from drying out. Plus, the water will collect all the drippings and keep them from getting burnt on the bottom. Once the roasting is done, we'll use this liquid to make our gravy. So you don't want to add any more than an inch, as this could dilute the flavor. And another benefit for cooking it this way, since all the moisture is being locked in with the lid, we won't have to worry about basting it at all. Generally, we roast a turkey based on its weight. That's 15 minutes per pound. That's the guideline. Although to be safe, you should always check the final temperature before you're done roasting. You shouldn't have to check on the turkey at all while it's cooking. Just leave it alone. But about half an hour before you expect it to be done, open the oven and take the lid off. Let it cook this way for the rest of the time, exposed to the direct heat. You'll want the skin to darken up and start getting crispy now. Aim to cook it to an internal temperature of 165. After the time is up, take the reading at the thickest part of the breast. If the temperature is still too low, but the skin is darkened up enough, put the lid back on and test again in 10 to 15 minutes. But this looks like it's done. Time to come out. I also suggest getting a good platter to transfer the turkey to. It'll make for a great centerpiece at your table. And if it's a china platter, you'd best warm it first under the tap. This will protect it from being shocked by the heat of the turkey and keep it from cracking from the quick temperature change. Okay, so notice here how the hot juices start spilling out when I just remove the thermometer. The turkey is really hot. This is exactly why you don't want to start cutting it too soon. So let's move the turkey to the platter and let it rest for 15 to 20 minutes before cutting it. The hot juices need time to cool off, and then they'll get reabsorbed into the meat. This is key because then your turkey will never come out dry. No turkey dinner is ever complete without the gravy. So while it's resting, let's start mixing that up. We'll use some or even all of the liquid from the roasting pan as a base. This will have all the flavor of the fat and drippings that came off the turkey as it cooked. Also, if you want to ensure a smooth gravy, you can strain it at this point. But obviously, this is far too runny. It needs to be thickened up. For us, we've always used cornstarch to do that. You could use regular wheat flour, but some people have health issues with the gluten, so cornstarch is a good substitute. If you need to be gluten-free, you could also use potato starch or arrowroot. Even though you strained it, everyone's common complaint is a lumpy gravy, and that's usually caused by not adding the starch properly. You never want to add powdered cornstarch to a hot liquid directly. This is what causes it to clump, and your gravy, well, it ends up being a big disappointment. Here's a quick demonstration to show what I mean. This is about half an inch of boiling water. I'm going to try stirring in a teaspoon of dry cornstarch. It immediately clumps up and refuses to mix well with the water. Look at all these clumps. This is what could happen to your gravy. So to avoid this, we need to make a slurry with it first, and that's the key. The rule of thumb is about 1 tablespoon of cornstarch for every cup of liquid you use from the pan. Start with a separate container and add a few tablespoons of cold water. Then spoon in roughly the same amount of cornstarch. Whisk it until it's all smooth. It's a little stiff at first, but it'll mix up in a few seconds. You may have to whisk it again if you don't use it immediately, as it can start to settle. Turn up the heat and start pouring some of the slurry in. You need to whisk it vigorously now. Keep heating it until it boils. The cornstarch won't activate properly until it is boiled, so keep whisking and then turn the heat down to test how it's thickening up. If you think it's still too loose, you can boil it again with more slurry until you get the right consistency. Yeah, this is still a bit too runny. I'll whisk up some more. 1 more tablespoon of cornstarch and 1 of water. Yes, this is better. And for your presentation, a gravy boat always looks good on the table. So after all your hard work, you're now ready to cut your turkey and finally serve it. Everyone will be impressed with how tasty and juicy your turkey is, and how smooth and perfect your gravy came out. Don't let on how easy it really was. Just enjoy the compliments. In part 2 of this series, I'll show you how to take all the remaining parts of the turkey that you wouldn't eat and turn it into a delicious broth. Then we'll pressure can it so you can safely use it later in the year. Be sure to subscribe now so you won't miss out. Well, thanks very much for watching. I hope you were able to pick up a few tips. We'll see you next time. When you garden well, you'll always eat well.